If you've finally concluded that the Six Figure Mentors is a scam, but you're wondering why others who came to that same conclusion never did anything about it, this video sets out to explain why. It's based around the belief that as time goes by, one's commitment to a bad financial investment becomes less and less until eventually they simply cut their losses and walk away. As a disclaimer, the following review was made in April of 2017, so terms and conditions of the Six Figure Mentors may have changed since that time. I'm re-releasing this video now because clearly, a whole lot of new people are still being taken in and spat out by this company. The argument is that you've been deceived and manipulated into joining something of far less value than what you paid for. The dropout rates for the Six Figure Mentors since it began in 2010 will emphasize this point. So here's the video from 2017 that explains why so many eventually quit without putting up a fight. This is a warning, especially if you're a newer member, of what lies ahead. I want to talk about a concept called the sunk cost fallacy and why you need to be aware of it. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency of people to irrationally follow through on an activity that is not meeting their expectations because of the time and/or money they have already spent on it. The type of company that can leverage the effects of the sunk cost fallacy is a company that takes in large financial investment and a period of time to pass in order for results of that investment to be realized. To illustrate how this works, we have a graph. The vertical axis represents the person's enthusiasm to what they're doing, and the horizontal axis represents the passage of time. Let's say that one person decides to buy two different cars. They love each car with the same amount of enthusiasm, but one car was decidedly more expensive than the other. So the first car that they pay $200 for, they drive for a couple of months until they notice that it starts breaking down often and is costing them extra money in repairs. They have the car fixed, but the mechanic advises them that the car is full of faults and she is almost certain that it's going to be costly to keep running. So upon hearing this, and because they only paid $200 for their car, they have no problems with throwing that car away because the original investment was insignificant. So the same person decides to start driving their other new car, but this car cost them $2,000 to buy. After 2 months, the same problem happens and the same mechanic tells them the same thing. But this time, because they paid a greater amount for that car, they decide to take their chances and keep driving it with the hope that things will improve and that their car won't break down on them. But they continue to drive and they continue to pile up costs. And although their optimism is gradually decreasing, they keep pushing forward because they aren't ready to accept that their $2,000 investment was not a good one. In the process, they've continued to pile up more debt and repair costs until finally they decide that enough is enough and throw in the white flag. And the reason that you do finally quit is because the cost of maintaining that investment finally takes priority over the cost of getting into that investment. So in other words, you're finally ready to give up on your original investment just to get out of the current situation that you're in. Consequently, it means that you're going to be willing to give up your original investment without putting up a fight because you've crossed a threshold where you just want to get out. The SFM's cancellation page offers subtle hints as to how their system can play into the sunk cost fallacy. If you look at their cancellation page, you'll notice that once you decide to quit the SFM, your account will be closed immediately. You'll lose access to your dashboard, and you'll also lose the favorable commission rates that you received access to when you positioned. On top of that, any other financial investments that you had made with or towards promoting the SFM will become forfeited and you will be walking away with nothing. This means that the SFM have another variable that could play into the hands of the sunk cost fallacy. And that variable is the fear of losing all variable. So with the SFM you have the high investment variable, the time realization variable, and the SFM's very own sacrifice all if you quit variable. So I can definitely see a set of variables within the SFM from where the sunk cost fallacy can affect people. I also want to be fair here and make the point that the SFM do allow you 30 days to opt out of SFM Essential and 3 days to opt out of your higher cost positioning options from Elite onwards, immediately after making the transaction. But I'd like to make it clear that on average, everybody is at their most motivated at the point of joining and positioning with the SFM, therefore less likely to opt out at this point in time. You see, during that period of time, the SFM keep you very busy with getting started modules and webinars, with introducing great ideology and inspirational talk. You're learning a whole lot of new information related to marketing, and scheduled sales calls and webinars also fall within these time periods, so your mind will be looking further ahead rather than focused on the present. An example can be seen when you position at SFM Elite. You will likely have a DEA consultant call scheduled for outside of the time that the SFM Elite refund period actually lapses. You're still on the ascent with your membership experience, so I would argue that from a psychological standpoint, you're still focused on the opportunities ahead rather than the financial sacrifices immediately in front of you. Because of all the activities that are taking place inside the first month or so, it won't be until about month 2 or 3 that you'll step back and start to take a look at things a bit more objectively. There's also a counter agent at work on the cancellation page. The one bright spot in the cancellation policy is that once you finally do decide to quit the SFM, no more charges will be made to your credit card and you will no longer have to worry about making any more payments to the SFM. In the sunk cost fallacy example I cited earlier, I mentioned that the reason that you do finally quit is because the cost of maintaining that investment finally takes priority of the cost of getting into that investment. In the SFM's cancellation page alone, we see that you have a threat of losing access to everything if you quit, but also an incentive not to have to pay any more money if you do decide to quit. So why would they encourage you to not quit and also encourage you to quit? The reason why they wouldn't want you to quit is obvious. And before I explain why they would encourage you to quit, please answer the following question. Which of these two sentences concerns you more? 1. You quit and you lose everything. Or 2. You quit and you pay no more fees. The answer is simple if you think about it. The sentence that means more to you is dependent on where you are currently positioned on your own sunk cost fallacy timeline. If I were a company like the SFM, by the time that somebody got to the point that they would rather quit than maintain their membership, I'd prefer that they cancelled their membership anyway. They've already made their major positioning payment. At this point, I know that they're not going to make any money for me as an affiliate, and I know for certain that they're not going to position any deeper within my company. But even more importantly, their desire to cut and run would suit me just fine because I no longer have to worry about them asking for their money back. I can now move on and take my chances with the remaining 3 billion internet users around the world for my next recruitment push and big ticket item, while the member who quit just fades quietly into the background. With the SFM being a company that involves large investments of money and the reliance of time to realize results, I believe that there is definitely a foundation from which the sunk cost fallacy can take effect. It's something that you have the right to be aware of, because your consent to the SFM must be genuine.